All right, panels are painted, clear coats on, 3 coats, heavy, wet coats, and I'm going to go through the steps that it takes to get to the buffing for this paint. So this front fender, actually if we look closer, it looks pretty rough, and that's because I ended up abrading the surface when I got home with 1000 grit in order to help it off gas. I mean, it had a nice sheen to it, but it was very, very bubbly or peely. As you can see, I was a lot lighter up here, but if you can see all that texture, that's just taking a quick rub of 1000 across the surface and doing that so that the panel itself can off gas. And it really does. As soon as you scratch it, you can smell those isocyanates right away. I had to put my mask on the first night because I didn't have the door open. But as you can see, this is 1000 grit, as I keep saying. But what I want to do is I'm going to go over this and fully level it with 1000, and then I'll take you through the steps. I said that I was going to post the next step in the sanding stage, and then I went through different panels, brought them up the whole way, polished, and it looked great, but I just wasn't happy with it. So, case in point, you can see, there's a shine to this. You can catch, what's across the street in the reflection, but if I am able to look at it a certain way, and I look down that panel, I'm not sure if the camera's going to catch it, but there's a lot of what still looks like orange peel in it. So I was really frustrated with it. Took some time off, figured, you know what, let's just do it again. So instead of going through the panel that I had, which was one of the front fenders, I'm going to go through this bedside, and even though it is all polished, I'm going to go back through, do the whole thing over again, and I had skipped 1500 grit paper the first time. So I guess what I'm going to do is chalk that up as a mistake. You definitely don't want to skip 1500 if you're going to go to 2000 next. So I'm doing 1000 wet, 15 dry, 15 wet, 2000 wet. That might seem like overkill to some, but I'm not doing a lot of cutting with the 1000. I'm doing a lot of the straightening with the 1500. So the 1500 actually, I went out and I got a DA. So you can see there, it's a DA by Griot's Garage. So I have this tape already on here, masked off my edges. So let me go through. I'm going to show you 1000 all the way up, and then we'll reveal the tape between the two, and hopefully you can see a difference in the clarity. All right, pretty self-explanatory. As you can see, very hazy, 1000 as compared to fully polished. One thing that I want to point out, if you see me just like eyeing up the panel, what I'm doing is I'm trying my best to check reflections in it. You might not be able to catch it once again, but I can see a reflection here of the roll bar. But what I'm doing is I'm catching one of the edges of the garage door and taking it down the panel, as you can see, which would be up in here, and I'm following that with my eye through this. And although it's hazy here, if you catch it the right way, you'll be able to see that reflection, and I can see it. It wants to bounce all around because of what's just taking place is I'm leveling in clear coat, making this flat, and then polishing as it's flat, because light's going to hit it, and it wants to reflect all different ways. If it's not flat, the light reflects around and bounces so that you see those waves. But if it's completely straight and flat, you're going to only see reflections as if it were a mirror. So although I still have those bounces, I'm now going to take the DA with 1500. The first goal is to get rid of all of these cross-hatched scratches. And then once I do that, I'll come in and then check that same reflection. And when I start to see it gets very straight, that's whenever I'll switch over to 1500 wet. And then 1500 wet is really just get rid of the 1500 dry, so on and so forth. So let me bust out the DA, and I'll show you both versions of 1500, and we'll go from there. All right, so the 1500 dry is pretty much complete, and now I'm going to go ahead and 1500 wet, and then after that you'll see I'll just go into kind of touch up with 1500 wet along the edges. I'll pull some of my tape because then it'll just be by hand after that. So we'll go back to the distinction image here once I get further along, but you can still see it wants to reflect and everything looks pretty straight. So let's go 1500 wet and we'll move up. Okay, 1500 wet was real quick. Just a few talking points before I go and switch out my battery here. One thing that I've noticed with the 1500 wet, reason why I use it is because if any of the dust that comes off of the 1500 dry gets stuck on the pad, it leaves tracers, and with that being a DA, it leaves like a circular, it's like a spiral that can go the whole way through the travel of the DA. So with the wet, usually that seems to take those right out, and then with my 2000 wet, I'll get rid of any kind of circular motion that I see. And if I see, hello, hello, and so if I go up from 1500 to 2000, I can get rid of any circular type scratch by doing the 2000 crosshatch, and then I know that if I see something circular, I got to go back because it's deeper. But just a few points on actually the DA itself. So this is a 1500 3M paper that I'm using both dry and wet, and just make sure if you've never sanded before with one of these, I'm a novice, but you want to keep your paper clean at all times, because I was just talking about those tracers. You don't want that stuff to rear its ugly head down the line, so you just need to, do a couple passes, take it off, brush it off, pat it, spray it if you're doing wet. That really helps. Another thing that I saw on a lot of videos and research I did, and actually talking to a paint professional, the setup I have is a 3M backing plate, which is a little meatier than what came with the griots. So you can see down here, there's one here that's 3/4 of an inch fatter than the other, and then there's this intermediate pad. The paint professional I talked to said that is pivotal in all of this, because this allows that paper to float across the surface. So anywhere I'm going to use the DA, I need to have that in place, because it allows the paper to contour to these. I'm still a little skeptical of running it over edges like this, so you might see me just doing this all by hand in this area, but anything flat, it's going to get the DA. But I'm doing this one just for demonstration, and I'm running a real low speed on that. So I went over this a lot. I thought that it would cut super fast, but it turns out that I'm had 1,000 grit scratches in here, ran the DA over it, and it took a little bit just to get those out. So although 1,000 is abrasive, it's not cutting at the pace that I thought it was. I thought I was going to burn through these panels like butter, but I've gained a little more confidence. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get 2,000 out. Well, actually, no, I'm going to do 1,500. I'm going to pull this tape from here over so that I can get this long edge by hand. I'll go 2,000, show you the results there, and then we'll go up. Okay. I didn't have time lapse 2,000 because the camera died, so I got charging the battery a little bit. So if I can get close enough, you can see the up cross hatched scratch marks. I don't see any long ways or circular type scratches in it, so that's my indication that all of my previous scratches are out. And from there, I'm going to go to 3,000 Trizact. So let's get that set up, and shouldn't take too long. 3,000's on there. wants to shine, so bring it up with 5,000. Don't really have much else to add to commentary on this. It's just you want to take your time with it. I was doing side to side so that now if I saw any cross-hatched, I would know that I need to go further with 3,000, but I don't see any, so then I'll go, well, I take that back. I see some up in here, so I'll continue with a little bit more 3,000 and go right into the 5. Alright, so now we're up to 5,000. I think it looks like water's still evaporating off of it, so it's kind of extra hazy. Catch it from this lighting, it's a little better. But what I want to point out here, I mean, you can see how it wants to reflect any way you catch it, things that are down in here. But with the 5,000, what I'm doing is I'm still just running over the panel laterally, and you just, with a grit that fine, you're just polishing at that point, so it's not like I'm looking for anything in particular. It's just I'm doing even passes. But a couple things I thought of before I go into actually getting the buffer out that popped into my head while I was sanding. Whenever I was doing this side, I mean, as you can see, it's polished, it looks good, but I didn't like the texture, as I said in the beginning of this video. I thought that the dual action sander was going to be what saved the day. And after using it on a few panels, it's a great tool, but it's not the ultimate end-all be-all with this process. A lot of opinions out there, I'm sure, on these items, and I'm sure, you know, guys will say, like, why would you want to use a DA? It's going to put heat into the paint. You don't want that. You're going to burn through panels, all that type of stuff. Well, I'm still a novice, so I can't really tell you, you know, to go out and get one or to not get one. But what I will say is I am learning with it, and I'm getting a little more comfortable each time I use it. But I'm not using it to the point where I am introducing an insane amount of heat into these panels. I'm using it as just an extra tool so that I can do things a little quicker, because I've already gone through and I've wet sanded and buffed the entire truck, and like I said, I wasn't happy with the results, so I'm doing it again. That's typically what happens with this project. I do things twice, and the second time is the final time, so this is no different. The I guess other part to this would be, as I was talking about earlier, these curves, you know, being careful with what you do. You saw I had tape. I was doing that so I can protect my edges. So I went and burned through any of these edges. Just if you're like me and you end up doing this twice, 3 times, however many, don't skip the little things, the little important parts that'll save you in the end, because this is still my first paint job, but I'm treating it as if it was just painted and I don't want to mess anything up. Whereas a professional, they have the luxury of, if they mess up, they just go right next door and they fix it, or it just is at the shop a little bit longer. Well, I don't have that luxury to take it back. I could definitely go back to the paint booth, but I'm going to just be careful to avoid that, because that's a huge setback in my eyes. And they're also using air tools and, you know, just burning through clear coat to get it smooth, whereas for me, I'm being extra careful so that I don't have to fix anything, you know, just keep checking my work. The old adage, you know, measure twice, cut once. So with that being said, I'm being very meticulous in all of this, and if I had the ability to go and just flow coat the whole truck, you know, put down a little bit of clear, sand it, put another coat over it, and be done, I would have did that. But I didn't know about it, or I knew about it, but I figured I would do it 3 coats wet, sand it out, see how it looks. That could be what I could do on the next paint job, who knows. But with all that being said, as I finish rambling, I'm being cautious. I don't want to burn through anything. At the end of the day, I'm going to take it to the paint shop and I'm going to say, hey, can you measure the thickness of this coating? And then I'll ultimately know, like, I could have went further, I went too far without me burning through, but I want to get a good idea of, like, could I have sanded more? Will I see more texture once I bring this all back to polished? I'm not sure. So I am still learning, but use what I'm saying, if you do end up watching this video, as sort of a starting point. You know, at least you're aware that those types of things can occur. And for me, I thought I could save time getting the DA. The DA, really, if I had to pick, it's really, I should have just got 1500 sandpaper and wet sanded it like that the first time, flattening it and just moving up the grits. But the DA is actually, it's a nice tool to have, to learn from. So I'm still going to keep using it. It'll cut down on some of the time I spend on panels, especially like the hood, something that's flat. But let me go through the buffing stages. I'll just briefly touch on what I'm using, why I'm using it, and show you the results along the way. So let's do that. All right, so we've got the buffer out. We're going to start with the wool pad, 1200 RPM, and bring this shine out with the polish. I got the liquid ice ready to go. Get this a little bit wet, add the polish, bring that shine. All right, got the wool all finished on there. Next, I'm going to move into my blue #2 pad, more of a compound pad, and take out any swirls that put in there. I got a more detailed video on this system coming up. For this video's sake, I'm just going to go through these, get it back up to where it needs to be, and then show the difference in the texture in the clear coat. So, let's get my spray. I saw that Paint Society video. I really like his videos. He talked about keeping your panel somewhat damp when doing this, and that way the oil always on the panel itself, so you're not dry buffing, because I've done that and I've seen sort of like a burn on the clear coat, which I've had to go back and sand out. So I like that tip. I'm gonna just go up here, and I'm at about 1600 with this cut. All right, and lastly, I'm gonna move into my polishing pad. So put that together. Now, as I'm feeling that, there is a little bit of warmth to it, so I don't want to stay on this too long. But I got the 3M Perfected Step 3. This stuff is Gucci. I think I rant and rave about it in my polishing video, so I'm not going to say anything else about it. Be redundant. But let's get this on there real quick and do our final comparison. All right, I'm getting the low battery sign, so let me pick this up and we'll come back. Okay, as promised, the final product, I decided I was just going to do this portion of the rear quarter as well so that it's a better example, because it was getting a little difficult to catch just on the top of this bedside. But let's talk about the good first, and then we'll go into the bad. Let's take, for example, I'm going to catch, if you can, catch the word shop line on right here. It's pretty far away, but that's, if you follow that, you can read the word shop line very well. And if I take you back here where I haven't touched yet, and you catch shop line and I move it around, it waves and dances all around. So that's what I'm trying to explain. It's might be hard to catch on camera. I have to go back and check this. This may never even make it to YouTube. We'll see. But for the most part, going through all of those steps, I'm able to achieve a like glass or like a mirror type finish. So I'm somewhat impressed, but I made mistakes along the way. The most recent one being, don't do this ever. Don't take a DA and go over this curve section here with the DA flat. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I'm pretty upset about it. I was able to burn through a little bit of the clear coat. I don't know if it'll catch it. It's ever so slight, but it's a strip right in here. And I was checking the lines and I saw this different type of texture in it, and I knew instantly what I did. You can even see, there it is. That's this sealer coat and primer surfacer underneath. So I guess eventually I'll put a video out on how to do spot treatment from my standpoint, a novice. I'm going to have to finish the rest of the truck, not make the same mistake, knock on wood, and I guess paint this whole top bedside. But the good news is I can drive the truck to the booth. I'll get it all back together, and I guess that's something I'm going to do in 2 months or so. So I guess the positive takeaways here, don't make the same mistake I did. And if you just take your time and you do the sanding the right way with a block, hard block, wet sand it down, do the polishing, you'll get a very nice finish. Maybe you don't want this mirror-like finish. Maybe you're okay with the orange peel, and if so, then you see it looks very nice. It just takes a certain way of looking at it, a type of eye, to see that peel and decide if you're happy or not with it. So hopefully this helps. This is a very long video. Hopefully you guys made it to the end. There's some learning points here. I'm no professional, but I'd like to at least hope that I put in the time and research to put forth my best effort. So if you have any questions, obviously I'm open to them. Paint's not my specialty. I'm still learning. I want to continue to learn. So I guess I'm still going to put out the video for the buffing system. And I guess in a few months' time, when the truck's all back together, I'm taking it back to the booth and I'm doing some spot treatment as if this were a collision type repair. Just put a sheet over the whole truck, work on this piece specifically, and see if we can fix it. All right, until next time, thanks for watching.